Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Great America Show. Good to have you with us. President Trump's show trial in New York continued this week. The court heard testimony from former Trump attorney Michael Cohen, or as the prosecution would describe him, their star witness. Their star witness happens to be a man who pleaded guilty to 8 counts of federal tax evasion and who pleaded guilty to perjury. And did I mention he went to jail and is disbarred? Cohen, their star witness, failed to report more than $4 million in income on his federal tax returns between 2012 and 2016. Now, isn't that convenient? According to the latest tax liens documents, Cohen still owes the IRS over $1 million in back taxes, penalties, and interest. Members of Congress, senators, and vice presidential hopefuls showing up this week in the Manhattan courtroom supporting President Trump. And one of those people in attendance, Vivek Ramaswamy, vice president hopeful, even though the president said he's not going to select Vivek Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy says the jurors are not the only people who will be casting their vote on this case. It will be the American people on November 5th. And here he is.
And of course, we know that from the polls that have come out, even from the New York Times, Rasmussen Interactive this week, President Trump is leading all over the country. And the conclusion you could draw from that is the American people have already acquitted Donald Trump because the things that they're concerned about, inflation, crime, the border, the economy, all of these things, President Trump is leading by huge double digits versus Joe Biden. And the sooner that this scam trial can be concluded, the sooner that the president can get back to getting out, campaigning, and talking to the American people about the issues that matter to them.
And on November 5th, we'll find out if the American people choose truth, justice, and the American way, or if they choose to keep us on this path of destruction that has been put in place by the Marxist Dems and the Biden regime. And with the latest poll, troubles for Joe Biden. Marxist Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray coming to the rescue. Don't you feel better already? The two Marxists were on Capitol Hill this week announcing their latest plan to censor Americans under the guise of combating election threats. Garland spoke to the DOJ and FBI's work to protect elections from national security threats. Garland says it includes the FBI's National Security Division and the FBI's work to protect our elections from national security threats, which in his eyes is anyone who is not a Marxist Dem.
Protecting the right to vote was a founding purpose of the Justice Department. Today, fulfilling that charge means confronting the full range of threats to our elections. That includes continuing our work through this task force, our U.S. attorneys' offices, and our FBI offices across the country to investigate, disrupt, and combat unlawful threats against those who administer our elections. It includes the Civil Rights Division's essential work to enforce federal voting rights laws and to challenge discriminatory restrictions on access to the ballot. It includes the work of the Criminal Division's Public Integrity Section and our U.S. attorneys' offices to investigate and prosecute election crimes. And it includes our National Security Divisions and the FBI's work to protect our elections from national security threats, including malign foreign influence and cyber-enabled campaigns. The Justice Department recognizes the urgency of these threats, and we are prepared to confront them. We will continue to protect people's safety, and we will continue to protect our democracy.
In no world should the word democracy ever come out of Merrick Garland's mouth. Garland has done more than any person in the history of the country to undermine democracy, besides Barack Obama and Joe Biden and a handful of others. Under Garland's watch, we've seen lawfare waged on more innocent people than we have ever seen before, whether it be a former president, former Trump administration officials, or the J6 political prisoners. Our guest today is Attorney Jeff Clark, former Assistant Attorney General, now Senior Fellow at the Center for Renewing America. And he's one of those victims of lawfare from Garland and the Biden regime. And now here is Jeff Clark. And Jeff, great to see you again and to talk with you. is always instructive, interesting, and in fact, infuriating when I think about all that the Marxist Dems are trying to do to you and carrying out official lawfare under the color of law against you. Tell us first how your personal fight is going.
Sure, Lou. Well, thanks for asking. It's always great to be on with you. Look, I'm fighting in 6 different forums, or have been in the recent past. Just last night, I filed a brief in the 11th Circuit, which spans Georgia, where I'm attempting to remove the Fani Willis case from state court to federal court. And, that brief, we asked for a delay because we wanted to see how the President Trump immunity case in the Supreme Court goes. And one of my arguments in state court, but really it's key to my federal defense. You're supposed to get a federal forum if you're a federal official to be able to present federal immunity defenses, right, is that I'm similarly immune for the actions I took inside the Justice Department. And the 11th Circuit did not, they kind of pocket vetoed the extension request. So we had to file last night. And the thing that I wake up to seeing basically today really infuriates me that Merrick Garland, Lisa Monaco, the Deputy Attorney General, and Christopher Wray, the FBI director, are doing a press conference indicating that they're gearing up election integrity enforcement procedures and actions, et cetera, to protect the 2024 election from the right wing. And what was the brief I was filing last night? One of the arguments I was responding to from Fani Willis and her lawyer, since I know she didn't write that brief, is that the Justice Department has no role in federal elections and state elections like the one that was held down in Georgia. I mean, give me a break. It's only when they think that, this could benefit President Trump that they make up these new rules. But then when they get into power, they try to leverage all those tools to help Joe Biden, Lou. That's what's going on.
It's what's going on. It is a disgrace. The question becomes, where do we begin? When we're talking about corruption in this country right now, in our government, we can start with the FBI. We can start with the Department of Justice, the White House, of course. We reach over to the intelligence communities, also corrupt, politically corrupt. There is, in every direction we turn, the federal judiciary and the D.C. court system. It's outrageous. It is third world. It's a tin-pot dictator idea of justice in the D.C. courts. We go to the federal judiciary in other districts and jurisdictions. I have to say, Jeff, I just can't find a place where I think American justice is working. What is working is the Marxist Dem version of justice, which is pursuing their own interest and insisting on outcomes that benefit them at the expense of everyone else. Am I wrong?
It's hard for me to argue with you, Lou. I'd like to be able to argue with you. And I think maybe a decade or certainly 2 ago, I would have argued with you and said, look, there are really good judges out there. But it seems to me that the judges on the left are very energized to get to particular results, and they will do it regardless of what the law says. They'll create new laws. They'll invent new constitutional rights. Meanwhile, there are many people who are milquetoast Republican appointees, and they kind of fiddle while Rome burns. They worry about issues that are not so important, and they're not pushing back against all of these developments like lawfare that you're pointing to, and actually just open corruption, right? I mean, just take the fact that the special counsel appointed by Merrick Garland, and thus really appointed by President Biden to look into the Biden documents that trace to his time as a senator and as vice president, they come up with a new test of, we're not going to bring this case because he's really not fully compos mentis now. But right. That's not the test. The test is, at the time he took the documents that were classified, did he have any right to take them, and what was his mental state then? And clearly they have him on tape saying, to his biographer, hey, I found the classified documents box in my garage. And yet he still gets a free pass. And they're trying to crucify President Trump, who had the ability to declassify documents, I think even through a course of conduct. And he is the source of all classification power. That's where the whole classification regime starts, is with executive orders and the like. And they're trying to go after him on the theory that, he's like Mata Hari or something. He's an international spy under the Espionage Act. It's truly ridiculous, Lou.
It is. It's ridiculous. It's tragic, and it's outrageous that and it really tells you where the corporate national media stands. If the corporate national media were still an independent journalistic institution in this country, they wouldn't dare do this, because the American people would be watching, they'd be bombarded on their nightly television news shows with this story, the outrage of it all, the assault on our Constitution, the absolute obvious corruption of the Marxist Dem Party, and where is Barack Obama would be amongst the questions they would be trying to answer right now. But what we're watching is a Marxist left in this country that has seized control of our federal government and has no fear whatsoever of the national left-wing media, because they know they're not going to be held account. There won't be transparency because there's no insistence upon it from the Fourth Estate. It's that straightforward. This is a sorry, evil time in which we're living.
It is, Lou, and you'd asked for an update. I talked a little bit about this 11th Circuit case, which relates to Fonnie Willis, but they're also trying to take my bar license. So let me tell you about the two most recent incidents there. I think you'll get a kick out of them. One is that there was literally a question from one of the members of the hearing panel of, isn't what I tried to do while I wanted to look at the election and investigate it during 2020 into early 2021, that was the equivalent of getting on a bus in D.C. and stabbing a nun. I am not making that up. I literally fell out of my chair when I heard that question asked. You're an official at the Justice Department. You have ideas about how to investigate. You give legal advice, and that's being analogized to murder. And then the other thing was they were trying to cloak the charges in attempt, because they really can't say that I actually did anything wrong. So it's an attempt, they say. And so one of the other analogies came from the chair of the hearing committee. He asked, why was I any different than John Hinckley, who tried to assassinate President Reagan? And I'll add a third thing. No, I'm not making this up. And then the third thing I'll tell you, as the trifecta, is that the bar prosecutor said in his closing that I was, the most dangerous man since 1861 in terms of a threat to the Republic. So there you go, Lou. I mean, there's no hyperbole on the other side or anything like that.
None whatsoever. Would we know any of these names? Are they household names, or are they properly in obscurity?
They are in obscurity because they are two volunteer lawyers and one volunteer layperson. And I think the whole structure is unconstitutional, right? Who is a private body of volunteers? How are they to judge my conduct inside the executive branch, under Article 2 of our U.S. Constitution in the superior, font of government, the federal government, as opposed to, D.C. home rule. So we're talking about D.C. home rule volunteers, one of which is whom is not even a lawyer. And they're judging my conduct involving sophisticated legal issues involving the election and constitutional issues under the Appointments Clause and the Opinion Clause as if they're qualified to judge those issues, and they're not.
I would take it that all of them are Marxist Dems at the very least. Would I be inferring correctly, do you think? Well,
that's the kind of sense that we have, right? Especially because they're in DC and they're volunteering for a panel like this. I think sadly, we got to point some, fingers in our own direction, or as they say, when you point one finger at somebody, you're pointing two fingers back at yourself.
By the way, I've never understood that saying, by the way.
Well, I think I won't illustrate it graphically because that would be rude, Lou.
No, I understand.
But I think the point is just that, look, Republicans should serve on these kinds of bodies as well. If they're going to have them, then, we can't cede all that territory to the other side. And I think, sadly, we have.
Yeah, sadly, we have. And tragically, we haven't got the guts, apparently, in the Republican Party to take these people on. I have never seen such a bunch of wilted daffodils as the Republican Party right now. without Donald Trump leading the way, this would be a sad march to oblivion on the part of the Republicans, in my opinion. Jeff, we're going to come right back after some quick messages, folks. We're talking with Jeff Clark. He is one of the great lawyers in the country, in my opinion. He is also a man who's being persecuted relentlessly, as he said, by Lawfare, the Marxist Dems idea of justice and fair play. We are living in a dark period of ignorance and viciousness, the likes of which I thought America would never see. We're there. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back. We're talking with Jeff Clark now. And Jeff, let me turn to the Justice Department idea that their announcement that they're going to be cracking down on threats against election officials all across the country. They did everything but give us a drum roll, a few trumpets, and have the standards flying high as they march to a noble cause. These are the same people who have created truth ministries. They have created agencies that are there to enforce their idea, there being the Marxist Dems idea of what is true, what is false, what is right, and what is wrong. And they're doing so against the Constitution of the United States. What are we to do in response to the ignorance and the vicious intent of this? Is far more now than a thought crime on the part of the left. This is an assault on the Constitution and our way of life.
Well, I think, Lou, the most important thing to do is to get out and vote and get Donald Trump back in the White House, because he is going to clean house at all of the federal agencies if he's returned to the White House, and I pray that he is. I don't think we're going to see anything while President Biden is president, right? They went through the kabuki dance that we've already covered of the Her investigation. That's the best you're going to see. I think that we need to see the legal community as well wake up and bring more cases, right? And use the power of state governments. We have state AGs, some of whom are quite aggressive. And in particular, you picked the issue of the censorship and the public-private partnership on that, the revelations of the hashtag Twitter files, et cetera. Thankfully, there are conservative AGs, Louisiana, Missouri, who are pushing back against that. They got a case to the Supreme Court. I was actually terribly saddened to listen to that oral argument and, hear some of the justices say, well, this isn't really much different than when I was at the White House or the Justice Department or special counsel, independent counsel's office, and I'd call up to the press and complain about a story. No, of course, it's entirely different. They've institutionalized it. They've weaponized it. Exactly. They're working with characters like this Elvis Chan, right? Even Mark Zuckerberg had to immunize himself to some extent by going on Joe Rogan and admitting that basically the government was leaning on him to censor. And that shows you that it's entered in a whole nother sphere. It's not just an, slight influence operation. It's institutionalized corruption at the highest levels.
Yeah, he's not immunized against that $400 million he spent to take over civil election offices and to carry out a campaign to alter the election. His immunity is resting in his bank accounts. And that will likely, let's be cynical and also honest, and that likely will be a sufficient immunity against what should be, in my judgment, a prosecution against him. Your thoughts?
Well, we'll see, Lou, especially if there is a new sheriff in town come January 20th, 2025. There's a new attorney general. There's a new assistant attorney general of the antitrust division. I think big tech has been allowed to run roughshod over Americans' First Amendment rights and also to accumulate enormous monopoly power. And it's monopoly power that I think is much more of a dagger at the heart of our republic than anything that AT&T did in terms of controlling the telephone network. And as we know, in the 70s, that was broken up by, the courts in D.C. What's past, could be future again if people have the political will to do it.
Yeah, if we do not have the political will and if we do not have the leadership that will break up these companies, including Google, Meta, the list goes on, then we're sitting here, we're looking at the expiration date is coming into focus for this constitutional republic, because these companies are so powerful that they can and have. Think about Google, think about Meta, dozens of interferences in the 2020 election, 2022 election, and it's reported as a matter of, if you will, rote. But the reality is there should be an outrage. There is no public outrage because the public cowers before the extraordinary power of these prosecutors, the FBI, weaponized against the American people. This is a battle between we, the governed, and our government, and whether or not they're going to seek our approval ever again. I want to turn to the client privilege issue. Michael Cohen playing a secret recording that he made of a conversation with his client and played it in open court. What in the heck is going on?
Lou, it's been a constant theme of all the lawfare against President Trump that his attorney-client privilege in any capacity, whether as the official capacity that he held when he was president of the United States to receive advice from lawyers at the White House counsel's office privately, or advice from Justice Department lawyers like me privately, or in his private capacity, in his campaign capacity from folks like, John Eastman. His privilege with John Eastman was burst by a California judge who, found, I think without any evidence, that they were engaged in a crime. He applied the crime fraud exception, right? It's gotten to be so bad that, when I raise attorney-client privilege with the president in his official capacity, some of these adjudicators look at me like I have two heads, like, well, we already know the story because there was the January 6th committee, et cetera. And then the response is, well, but they violated President Trump's privileges. They totally did not respect them, whether it's executive privilege, attorney-client privilege, something. I have a letter from the Justice Department even that tells me to take law enforcement privilege. But, these things have been sliced through like a hot knife through butter. And so what we're seeing with Michael Cohen, who, I'm sorry to say, but is truly a legal bottom feeder, is, just, it's off the charts. But it's like
he's much worse than that. I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to be kind, but I mean, he's like the end state, right? The apocalypse of ignoring legal privilege, and the Republic can't stand without legal privilege, Lou, because we need lawyers as the proxies to fight battles in the courts. And if clients can't rely on lawyers to keep their confidences, then the whole system breaks down.
Yeah, I'm not going to quote Jonathan Turley accurately here, but I'm going to get close to it. He talks about Michael Cohen as being a wreck looking for a train. It's when it comes to the criminal justice system, it's appalling. And we're going to take up that part of the persecution of Donald Trump right after these quick words. We're talking with Jeff Clark. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Wellness Company and their doctors are medical professionals you can trust. And their new medical emergency kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. This medical emergency kit contains an assortment of life-saving medications, including ivermectin, Z-Pak. Rest assured, knowing that you have emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics on hand to help you and your family stay safe from whatever life throws at you next.
We're back. We're talking with Jeff Clark, and Jeff, he's at the Center for Renewing America. I want to turn to Jack Smith, admitting that he has violated the same law as used against January 6th defendants to imprison them in the D.C. gulag. He has admitted to tampering with evidence, and there is no response at this point. We know that this special counsel Robert Hur gave just gratis, apparently, a pass to the sitting president because, as you earlier referred to, he's mentally impaired. What in the world is there? There's no way to straighten all of this out. We are caught in a vector dominated by the Marxist Dems, and they mean to tear this country to pieces. And the Republicans have a hard time ingesting and comprehending that reality. Why is that?
Well, Lou, I mean, they're throwing everything they can at us and against any attempt to reclaim the true republic, all while wrapping themselves in false claims that President Trump is going to be a dictator. I mean, was he a dictator in the first term? Didn't we, see him work with Congress? Didn't we see him engaged with the courts? Didn't we see him actually on January 20th, 2021, board the helicopter and, fly out? These things are so ridiculous, but it's almost, we got to be like really good world-class soccer or hockey goalies. But what the left is counting on is that they just keep, jamming the puck at us again and again and again, and they hope that like one slips through. And, what's happening with Jack Smith here, right? We're talking about this statute, 18 U.S.C. 1512 C2. I was pleased actually to moot that case at the D.C. Circuit level before it went to the Supreme Court, Fisher. And, the case, that statute was designed to fill a kind of loophole that was created, that emerged, I should say, in the Enron debacle, and fill it they did. It's focused on document destruction and tampering and the like. They weaponized it and tried to turn it into, because of some loose catch-all language, into something they could use against people who went into the Capitol on January 6th. Stretching.
What did they actually say in English? I mean, what they basically said is you're impeding an official proceeding,
right,
which was pure nonsense. The documents that were touched, in some way contaminated by the people touching the hands of their government, the papers of their government. I mean, this is outrageous. This is elitism at its worst. It is sophistry and speciousness at its pinnacle. These are stupid lawyers. These are stupid people making ridiculous arguments that couldn't stand the test of anyone with average logic and an understanding of basic law. I mean, it's crazy that it gets through the federal judiciary.
Yeah, Lou, look, if you had a legal practice like I've had, right, at sophisticated high levels, both in the government and in private practice, you sometimes come across very green lawyers, or I also was a law professor at what's now called Scalia Law in Virginia for a decade. And, the young lawyers will start to spot problems, right? So if I had a student and he said, I read that statute to say, obstruction of an official proceeding, we could apply that to this. I would say, okay, look, you're reading the text well, but the thing you need to develop through practice is judgment. And judgment in some instances can't be taught. You need to kind of be around lawyers who are experienced. You need to read lots of judicial decisions, and you'll get a sense of what arguments will work and what arguments don't. But I think in the Biden administration, in the early days, their heady days of their shock and awe campaign after January 6th, they decided, that, this looks good on paper and therefore we're going to launch it. The consequences be damned. And, compared to Jack Smith actually engaged in conduct that the statute covers, many of us who saw that picture with the color-coded cover sheets, splayed out on the floor, we're like, that's totally fake. There's no way you found the documents like that, right? And of course, that's now been admitted. And
you didn't have to be a lawyer to know it was a fake. It was a piece of disinformation put together, propaganda emanating again from the federal government. The federal government is the single largest source of disinformation, misinformation, and propaganda directed at the American people. We don't have to fear the Russians. We don't have to fear the Chinese, the Iranians. We've got a government that is shooting this stuff at us daily, and it's got to stop. And once, Kierkegaard once said, to understand is to negate. Now, we can go through the understanding of what's happening with young professors, young students. We're talking about the United States government.
Yes.
And that then becomes that explanation, that understanding becomes, to me, really rationalization for epically criminal conduct on the part of the government. There should be a purge of that government that is organic, coming up from the Justice Department itself, coming up from the White House itself. Instead, they are running this country like what it's become. It's become a dictatorship under a totalitarian Marxist dim puppet president, run by how many in the cabal that run him? I have no idea, but one of them has a name that starts with an O.
Well, they have not fully consolidated power, Lou, and that's why this election is so important, because I fear that if they win this election, the lawfare they'll continue with, the breaking of political foes, the destruction of the true conservative and populist wing of the Republican Party will continue, and they'll just return to a docile Republican Party who just feeds off table scraps. And we have to break that era and see that it doesn't return, because it's clear that they're aiming for a one-party monopoly in running the country, Lou. That's just,
Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has assured it at least to the end of the 118th Congress, and it's in our face. It's precisely what he's doing. It's what has been done, and the investigating committees right now have been undercut in every way that is important to have proceeded. We talk about contempt proceedings of Congress against Merrick Garland. We know we're whistling in the dark. This is the American people know it. The pretense has to end, and the assault has to start. If there's no counterattack from the Republicans, November 6th is going to be a very dark day in America, because we don't see anyone in the Republican Party putting together ground forces, attorneys being recruited and enlisted to carry out the important work of challenging. Instead, we're watching the FBI getting ready to make sure that poll workers, you can't get within 100 feet of them, so there can't be Republican watchers. So, I mean, we're being outplayed, and I just want to get a sense from you as to what you expect to happen if this is the level of energy the Republicans are bringing to that campaign and to that election.
It's not good, Lou. I mean, there's some bright stars like, J.D. Vance, and, so I can think of several other senators, like Josh Hawley, et cetera. But, it's really, we need President Trump. And I've coined this term journo lawfare, trademarked, which is, I think it's a new phenomena of these, former lawyers, former federal prosecutors, former FBI or intelligence community members. They go into the media. They all sing from the same hymnal. They all attack President Trump. They all say he's going to be a terrible dictator, et cetera. It's all lies. And they've gotten even more brazen on this front. So, what we're seeing now, we just have a taste of it. There's this commentator, Glenn Kirshner, who was, 20 plus year veteran of the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., criminal prosecutor. He's, urging all of his followers to write judicial ethics complaints against and file them against Judge Cannon in the Southern District of Florida, because, he thinks that, she's slow walking the Trump case, and that, she's just in President Trump's camp, when she seems to be really the only truly fair judge that President Trump has been assigned, not, one of the judges in these, blue hellholes or carefully chosen fora to try to bring President Trump down.
Washington, a nest of vipers, and that's what that's our national capital. It's the swamp. There's nothing benign about it. It is viciousness, banality, ignorance, a lofty standard of behavior on the part of just about everyone in that town. I'm not confident the Supreme Court will have either the courage or the vision to do the right thing. As a matter of fact, I think they're probably they're night courts in small towns that may have more integrity than the Supreme Court itself. We'll find out. Jeff Clark, no question about your integrity and your devotion to the country and to the law. We appreciate your being with us. Thanks so much, Jeff Clark.
Thank you, Lou.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks to Jeff Clark, and we wish him the very best. And thank you, everybody, for being with us. Be sure to join us tomorrow on The Great America Show, when our guest will be House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. He joins us to give us a full update on what is going on in his committee and across Congress as they take on the Biden corrupt regime. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and True Social at Lou Dobbs. Thanks for being with us. God bless you, and may God bless America.